This week we're continuing our trig unit with the unit circle. So the unit circle is this circle that you can see centered on the coordinate plane. It has its center here at the origin at 0, 0, and this is our x-axis, this is our y-axis. The radius of this circle is 1, so that radius is going just from the center out to any point along the outside of our circle. So I want to start by just labeling the degree measures on this circle. So we're starting here in the initial position is what we call this along the x-axis. And if we were rotating our angle, if we were just starting right there, there's no rotation, so we are at 0 degrees. If we took our angle and we rotated it up to here, that's a 90-degree rotation. So that is 90 degrees. We continued and we rotated from 90 over here, we're at 180 degrees. And then continuing down here, we get to 270 degrees. And then if we continued and rotated over here, we've done a full rotation. So a full rotation around a circle brings us to 360 degrees. So that's how we get those 4 angles around the circle. We're going to continue labeling though, and now we're going to go ahead and go with our 45-degree increments. So if we look at this angle, if we go from here to right there, that angle is halfway between 0 and 90. The number halfway between 0 and 90 is 45. So that is our 45-degree angle. If we kept adding 45-degree angles, we would add 45 plus 45 would bring us back up to 90, which we already labeled. Another 45 would bring us over here, and that measure is 135. If we added another 45, it would bring us back to 180, which we've already labeled. Another 45 brings us down here to 225 degrees. And then one more rotation here brings us back to 270. Another, we're over here at 315 degrees. And then one more 45-degree rotation brings us back to 360. And then the last bit that we have to label are these 30-degree increments that you see. So from 0 to this measure right here, that's a rotation of 30 degrees. Another 30-degree rotation brings us right here to 60 degrees. Another rotation back to 90. We've already got that labeled. Rotate again, and that brings us to 120. Another rotation here takes us to 150. Another 30-degree rotation is 180, which we've labeled. Another is 210 plus 30 brings us here to 240 plus 30 brings us back to 270, which we've labeled already. Plus 30 gets us here to 300. We add 30 again, we get to 330, and then one more 30-degree rotation brings us back to 360. So we have all of our degrees labeled in this unit circle now. In trig though, we often use this measure called a radian. So what a radian is it is the distance from the origin out to any point on the circle. So it's a radius of 1 on this unit circle. And it turns out if I took this radian and I tried to wrap it around the circle, so that's 1 radian, that's 2 radians, this is 3 radians, it brings me almost all the way to 180 degrees, but if you look, we have a little bit extra right here. It turns out that that little bit extra is equal to 0.14. So 3.14 or pi radians is actually equal to 180 degrees. So I'm gonna start labeling that right here. 180 degrees is pi radians. And if I did another 180-degree rotation, so I rotated from the initial position, which was 0 radians, rotated it all the way around here to pi radians. Let's say I did another 180-degree rotation. Pi plus another pi brings me to 2 pi radians. So 360 degrees is 2 pi radians. So we have all these other little measures that we need to fill out though. So if we look right here, this 90-degree measure, it's halfway between 0 and 180, or halfway between 0 and pi. So if we're trying to think about what that would be in radians, we are going to take that measure of pi and just divide by 2. So 90 degrees is pi over 2 radians. If I took that measure there and I added another pi over 2, so pi over 2, and I added another pi over 2, that equals 2 pi over 2, or just pi radians. Well, that's another 90-degree rotation there, brings us to pi. We already got that labeled. Let's do another 90-degree rotation. So from here down to here, we're trying to figure out what our radian measure is. So we are going to take that 2 pi over 2 and add another pi over 2. And that brings us to 3 pi over 2. So it turns out that 270 degrees equals 3 pi over 2 radians. If I want to figure out what my measure is for this one, I could add another pi over 2. So I have 3 pi over 2. If I add another pi over 2, I get 4 pi over 2, which just equals 2 pi radians. And I already have that 2 pi radians labeled. So that makes sense. All right, we're going to keep labeling. It looks like we have done our 90-degree rotations. Let's do our 45-degree angle rotations. So halfway between 0 and pi over 2. That's pi over 2 divided by 2. You could also think of this as, okay, how many 45-degree angle rotations do I have between 0 and pi? So I have from here to here is 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I took that pi and I said, okay, pi divided by 4, that's 45 degrees. If I do another 45-degree rotation, I'm going to take that pi over 4 and add another pi over 4. That gives me 2 pi over 4, or just pi divided by 2. I've already got that. Let's add another pi over 4. So I have 2 pi over 4. I want to add pi over 4. That is 3 pi over 4. So 135 degrees is also known as 3 pi over 4 radians. If I took that 3 pi over 4 and did another 45-degree rotation from here to here, I would just be adding another pi over 4. That brings me to 4 pi over 4. That simplifies to just pi radians. We've already got that labeled, so that's good. It's all working out so far. We're going to continue and do another rotation from here to here. So we're figuring out the radians at 225 degrees. So we're going to take 4 pi over 4, and we're going to add pi over 4. That equals 5 pi over 4. Let's do another rotation. So we're going from here down to here. So we're going to take 5 pi over 4, and we're going to add pi over 4. That equals 6 pi over 4. And you should see that we could simplify that as 3 pi over 2, which is what we already have labeled there. We're going to take this and rotate again to that 315-degree measure. So we're taking 6 pi over 4, and we are adding pi over 4, and we get 7 pi over 4. And if we added 1 more pi over 4 to bring us back to our initial position, 7 pi over 4 plus pi over 4, that would give us 8 pi over 4, which simplifies to just 2 pi radians. So that gives us 2 pi radians right here. So we've done our full rotation. We are going to continue to do 30-degree rotations this time. So let's think about how many 30-degree rotations do we have from 0 all the way to pi. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 30-degree rotations. So that means that if I took my measurement of pi and I divided it by 6, that is my 30 degrees in radians, pi over 6. If I add another pi over 6 to that, that gives me 2 pi over 6, which is just pi over 3 when you simplify it. We're going to continue adding, and we're going to do this again for this 30-degree rotation, so it should simplify to pi over 2 for doing things correctly. We have 2 pi over 6, and I'm going to add pi over 6, and I get 3 pi over 6, which equals pi over 2, so that's good. Let's do another rotation from here to here. So we're going to take 3 pi over 6 and add pi over 6, and we get 4 pi over 6. Simplify our fraction, and we get 2 pi over 3. Do this again, take 4 pi over 6, add another pi over 6, and we get 5 pi over 6, which is right here. Another rotation, 5 pi over 6 plus pi over 6 brings me to 6 pi over 6, which just simplifies to pi. We already have that labeled. And I'm going to keep going. So I have my 6 pi over 6. And I'm adding another pi over 6. And I get 7 pi over 6. So that's my measure at 210 degrees is 7 pi over 6 radians. Now we're going to do another 30-degree rotation. Take that 7 pi over 6, add pi over 6, and we get 8 pi over 6, which we can simplify to 4 pi over 3. Another rotation is going to get us back to this 270-degree mark. So I take 8 pi over 6, add pi over 6. I get 9 pi over 6. That simplifies to 3 pi over 2, which we already have there. We have just a couple more left. We're rotating once more here, and we're going to take our 9 pi over 6, add pi over 6. We get 10 pi over 6, and that simplifies to 5 pi over 3. We take that 10 pi over 6 and add pi over 6. We get 11 pi over 6. And if we add it once more, we should get back to 2 pi. So 11 pi over 6 plus pi over 6 gives us 12 pi over 6, which does simplify to just 2 pi. So we have all of our radian measures in addition to the degrees. The last thing we want to think about doing for our unit circle is adding in our coordinate points. So these coordinates are a little bit tricky to think about at first. What we want to do is think about, okay, if I have this measure of 30 degrees right here for this angle, what if I drew in a perpendicular line? So what if I just went down like this and I drew a perpendicular line down to my x-axis? That forms a right triangle. In geometry, you learned about a couple types of special right triangles. These right triangles were the 45, 45, 90 and the 30, 60, 90 right triangles. So our 30, 60, 90 that we learned about, the side across from 30 has a measurement of 1/2. The side across from 60 has a measurement of square root of 3 divided by 2, and the hypotenuse is 1. For our 45, 45 degree 90 triangle, we learned that the two legs of that triangle are equal to square root 2 over 2, square root 2 over 2, and our hypotenuse is also 1. It's important that you have that hypotenuse of 1 because if we're thinking about our unit circle and our hypotenuse here, our hypotenuse is actually equal to the radius of this circle, and we know for our unit circle the definition of the radius is that it equals 1. So I'm back here and I have this 30, 60, 90 degree triangle that I figured out the lengths to right here. And I can think about that point here, the x coordinate of that is equal to this side of the triangle, square root 3 over 2. And my y coordinate, the height of our triangle, which is 1/2. So that's how I would fill in that first coordinate. If I wanted to do that for that 45 degree measure, similarly, I would go ahead and draw in, okay, I want to draw a perpendicular line to my x-axis. And so that makes a 45, 45, 90 triangle, which I've written out the measurements to here. So that means x coordinate is equal to this side of the triangle, which is square root 2 over 2. So we're going to fill in the x coordinate is square root 2 over 2. The y coordinate is the height of this, which is also square root 2 over 2. If you want to fill these in a different section of your circle, you could still do that. Say we wanted to figure out the measurement for 300 degrees. We're going to draw a line. This time it has to go up to form that perpendicular to the x-axis. So this is still a 30, 60, 90 degree triangle. So we're going to take my triangle, we're going to put it right here. So sometimes you have to move them around. So it looks like my x-axis has a measure of 1/2. So my x coordinate for 300 degrees, or 5 pi over 3, is going to be 1/2. And my y-axis, which is going down, is square root 3 over 2. Remember that anything along the y-axis down here is negative. So this is actually going to be 1/2 and then negative square root 3 over 2. So you just have to consider your signs as you're doing these measurements. I'm going to go back up to that first quadrant again and just finish filling in this last one here. Pi over 3 was our radian measure. So if we draw our line going down, right triangle, it's a 30, 60, 90. And our x value is going to be 1/2. Our y value is going to be square root 3 over 2. The other ones that we can figure out easily are just these 4 along here, because those are actually on the x and y axes. So by definition, if the radius is 1, this point here is at 1 for x, and the y, it's not going up or down, so it's 0. This point, we're not going left or right, so our x coordinate is 0. We are going up to 1. Over here, we're going to the left, -1. Y value is 0. And down here, we don't have any x value. We're not going left or right, so that's 0. We're going down, though, to -1 for y. So your assignment for this week is I want you to try to think of these 30, 60, 90 degree triangles. And maybe you should even try cutting some out like I did here. I made these 3 little triangles here. And I want you to try to finish filling in these other coordinates on your circle.